Recording in progress.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Planning Commission meeting for the City of Hayward, November 14th, 2024. We're holding a hybrid meeting with some participants in the council chamber and others who have joined virtually via Zoom. This meeting is being webcast on Comcast TV Channel 15 and live streamed on the city's YouTube channel and on the city's website. Will you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Ms. Allen, will you please take the roll call?
Good evening. Commissioner Franco Clausen, absent. Commissioner Goodbody,
Present.
Commissioner Hammond, Commissioner Hardy,
Present.
Commissioner Myers,
Present.
Commissioner Stevens, absent. Chair Lowe.
Here. Thank you very much. Now it's time for the general public comment section. The public comment section provides an opportunity to address the Planning Commission on items not listed on the agenda. The Commission welcomes comments and requests that speakers present their remarks in a respectful manner with established time limits and focus on issues which directly affect the city or which are within the jurisdiction of the city. As a commission is prohibited by state law from discussing items not listed on this agenda. Your item will be taken under consideration and may be referred to staff for further action. Speakers shall not use threatening, profane, or abusive language which disrupts, disturbs, or otherwise impedes the orderly conduct of a commission meeting. The city is committed to maintaining a workplace free of unlawful harassment and is mindful that city staff regularly attend commission meetings. Discriminatory statements or conduct that is hostile, intimidating, or oppressive, or abusive, or per se disruptive to a meeting and will not be tolerated. Ms. Allen, do we have any public comments? The general public comments? Okay.
There are no public comments.
Okay. And I just want to clarify, there's one public comment here, a speaker card, and it doesn't give the topic. And so I just wasn't sure if that was a general comment or if that was specific for the agenda item number 1.
I believe one of them is for item number 1. The other one.
I believe the other one says stack center or data center, pardon. That's
Yeah.
also item number 1.
Yeah, the other one doesn't have any, so I'm just going to ask, so this is Sarah Lamnon. Do you want to give general comments or about item number 1? Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you. Just wanted to clarify. The first item on the agenda is the preliminary review of a major site plan review application to construct a 3-story data center, generator yard, substation, switching yard, and related accessory structures on an approximately 11-acre site located at 26062 Eden Landing Road, assessor parcel number 461-0085-052-01 and 461-0085-061-00. Application SP 230036. Miles Kirsten for Stack Infrastructure applicant on behalf of SISVYL3 LLC owner. May we hear from city staff on this item?
Yes, good evening, commissioners. Elizabeth Blanton, senior planner. In November of last year, the city received a major site plan review application from Stack Infrastructure for a new data center campus. Now, while this application is still under review and may evolve somewhat over the coming months, at this work session, I'm going to provide you with a high-level overview of the project, and then we'll ask for specific feedback on a few different topics, which will be helpful direction for both staff and the applicant team.
May I interrupt you just
Yes.
briefly? I notice our monitors are not on. Is there a problem with our monitors here, or are they working or not working?
Our IT heroes are coming out to see if they can assist. We will pause for a moment.
Okay, let me,
It took a moment for the presentation to pop up behind you, so perhaps they will pop up on your screens as well.
I apologize for interrupting. I just want to make sure we can see everything that
No
you've
problem.
prepared.
I'm seeing nodding heads. Okay, great. So again, this project is in progress. We're still in review. It's probably going to evolve a little bit over the coming months. But at this work session, we have some specific questions for the commission that we'd like feedback on, which will help guide us at this point in the process. And then in a few months, once the project review and environmental analysis are complete, this project will come back to the commission for a final adoption hearing at some point in 2025. So here we can see that the project site is located just south of Highway 92 on Eden Landing Road in the middle of the city's industrial area. It's fairly close to the Shoreline Interpretive Center, which is indicated by the yellow dot on the map, and sections of the Bay Trail, which are indicated by that dotted green line. Zooming in on our map, the site itself is approximately 11 acres, and it has frontages on Eden Landing Road, Production Avenue, and Investment Boulevard. It has a general plan land use designation of industrial corridor and is zoned industrial park, which allows for data centers by right, along with a range of other industrial and office uses. Now, currently, there's a light industrial office park with 9 single-story buildings on site, which would be entirely demolished to accommodate the proposed project. Staff has heard from one of the now former tenants of this office park that they were concerned that they'd be unable to find affordable office space elsewhere. We've also heard from a couple of the restaurants in that little commercial center that's across Eden Landing Road who are concerned about the potential impacts that the construction of the project would have and the limited number of future employees might have on their businesses. Now, this site plan rotates our orientation slightly so that North and Highway 92 are now toward the left of the image. The main building on site would be a 3-story, 310,000 square foot data center that is 100 feet tall. To support the project's significant power needs, there would also be an on-site substation and switching yard along Eden Landing Road, facing Highway 92 in that small commercial shopping center. And a large generator yard with 28 emergency backup generators facing Production Avenue. Additionally, site improvements would include a guard station, security fencing around the perimeter, new landscaping and bioretention basins, and outdoor seating for employees who are on break. The design of the primary building includes a mix of concrete, metal, and textured elements. This rendering is a view from Investment Boulevard, and as you can see, the building incorporates a number of elements from the city's industrial design guidelines, including varied wall planes and projections that help to visually break up the overall massing. Shifting our perspective a little bit to the corner of Investment and Production, we can more clearly see that awning and projection detail at the main entrance, as well as the use of different colors and materials throughout the facades. We can also see the screening that will help mask the view of that large generator yard facing Production Avenue. Now, in addition to the generator yard, the on-site substation and switching yard will also be screened. These conceptual renderings show what this screening might look like when viewing the project from Highway 92. The curved blue slats in these designs are meant to be evocative of the nearby Hayward shoreline, and the design of this screening is still being worked through. So staff and the applicant team will be very interested in hearing your thoughts tonight on what this screening might look like or should look like, in your opinion, given its high visibility in this gateway to the city. Now, while the project as proposed meets most of the requirements of the IP zoning district, there are 2 exceptions that the applicant is requesting. The first is a reduction in parking. Data centers are defined as an office use in our zoning ordinance, which means that they're required to provide one parking space for every 250 square feet of building. Now, given the size of this data center, this would require a total of 1,249 parking spaces for the project. Now, the city's parking regulations do allow for exceptions in cases where a use's parking demand would be significantly lower than the required number of spaces for that use. As illustrated in the parking memo that's attached to the staff report for this item, this data center project will have a maximum of 33 employees and up to 12 visitors per day. So thus, the 68 parking spaces that the application proposes would be more than enough to accommodate the project's daily parking demand. So as a result, staff supports the requested parking reduction given the uniquely low staffing needs of a data center. Now, the applicant team is also requesting a second exception related to building height. The main building's proposed 100-foot height is taller than the 75-foot maximum height allowed by the IP zoning district. Now, the city's code does allow decision makers to approve taller buildings in the industrial districts if there are sufficient public benefits or amenities included with the project to warrant that increased height. The applicant team and staff have met multiple times over the past year to discuss what the project's public benefit package should be to justify that requested height increase. And this latest proposal, which was received back in August, includes a total of $1.3 million in contributions toward various city projects and funds. This includes $300,000 each to the Gateway Marker Project and city parks, $200,000 to a small business grant program, and $100,000 each to HASPA, the Hayward Unified School District, city projects aimed at sustainability, the Stack Community Center project in South Hayward, and activation of the nearby Eden Landing Ecological Reserve parking lot, potentially for periodic food truck events. Many of the items on this latest public benefits proposal reflect not only conversations the applicant team had with staff, but also feedback received from the Council Economic Development Committee and the HASPA Board of Trustees. At their June meeting earlier this year, the CDC recommended that the public benefits package include hosting an ongoing food truck court nearby, a contribution for the Stack Community Center, and support for small businesses, all of which are included in this latest proposal. In addition, the CEDC wanted to see further enhancement of the project's architectural elements and its artistic screening, especially where it was visible from Highway 92. At their board meetings in February and October of this year, the HASPA Board of Trustees recommended a significant increase to the public benefits budget to cover a wider variety of green and sustainable projects, including contributions toward the renovation of the nearby Shoreline Interpretive Center, towards bike and pedestrian infrastructure, towards city parks, tree plantings, and educational programs. Now, from staff's perspective, we have provided the applicant with the following feedback at this juncture in the project. First, we want them to continue to develop the artistic screening around both the generator yard and the substation and switching yards, given the significant visual impact that this will have on the surrounding area. Secondly, we recommended that they revise the public benefits package to combine the Eden Landing Ecological Reserve activation contribution with the HASPA contribution so that we can leave it up to HASPA and its member agencies to decide how best to activate the nearby shoreline. And then finally, our public works staff requests that the proposed $100,000 sustainability contribution be increased to $350,000 in order to contribute towards two key CIP projects: solar panels for the water resource recovery facility, and better bike and pedestrian connectivity in the area, including nearby portions of the Eden Greenway project, which is shown on this slide. Representatives from our utilities and transportation divisions are available this evening to answer any questions that the commission might have about these two projects. Now, this project will be subject to environmental review, and it's anticipated that an initial study and mitigated negative declaration will be prepared. The California Energy Commission will be serving as the lead agency preparing the CEQA document, but they'll work in close cooperation with city staff. And of course, during the public comment period, members of the public will also be invited to review and provide comments on the environmental document as well. Now, at this juncture in the planning process, staff would like the commission's feedback on the following 3 questions. First, is the current public benefits proposal sufficient to warrant the requested height increase from 75 feet to 100 feet for the main building? If not, what changes do you recommend? Do you support staff's recommended changes, or are there other changes that you would like to see? Number 2, does the commission support the requested parking reduction given the uniquely low employment demands of a data center? And then finally, number 3, what feedback do you have on the building design and the conceptual plans for the artistic screening of the generator yard, substation, and switching yard? This concludes staff's presentation, but if the chair will allow, the applicant team has also prepared a short presentation before we open it up for questions and discussion.
Yes, we definitely like to see it.
Okay, great.
Excuse me? Go ahead.
We want to let it be known for the administrative record that Commissioner Stevens arrived at 7:06 p.m.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. Go ahead.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you so much for having us tonight. Again, want to really appreciate each and every one of you for coming tonight. We actually went for continuance last month to have as much participation from the commissioners as possible. So just really appreciate 6 here this evening. Last month we anticipated 4, and so we wanted to have as much feedback from the planning commissioners as possible during this midstream check-in before we continue on in the process and really hear from you all in the public realm. I'd also really like to thank Jeremy, Elizabeth, staff, Paul Nguyen, Mayor Salinas. Everyone at the city has been tremendously helpful through this whole process. We have been, as Elizabeth mentioned, our original application came in of November of last year, which was preceded about 4 or 5 months of discussions with planning staff before our first application came in. Over that period, I believe we're on our 4th, maybe 5th now of our iteration of the project, incorporating staff feedback and welcoming feedback from the community to better the project for responsible development. STAC is a global data center development group. We, in this role, operate as a developer owner, which means that we build facilities and then we lease them to data center operators. We maintain ownership through this whole period, and we own our investments long term. And so we intend to stay a member of the community of Hayward into the future. And this is something that we are always excited about and something that really differentiates ourselves from a lot of the large data center developers. Next slide, please. This is just a little view of STAC globally. A data center is what is powering the web view right now. A data center is what allows us to retrieve this presentation from the cloud. A data center is the nice to haves like the virtual calls or our social media platforms. It's also the need to haves like emergency dispatch. It's also the need to haves like records when we're in the hospital and the doctors need that information as soon as possible. It's also the need to haves like the FAA. The data centers facilitate the brick and mortar of the cloud of today. What we don't see in this visual here is all of the fiber and connectivity that connects our data centers and all of our competitors' data centers with the internet, and that crisscrosses the globe here. Here in Silicon Valley, next slide please. STAC remains committed to the Bay Area. We are headquartered, STAC Americas is headquartered in Denver, but we do have an office here in San Francisco, where we actually have 3 of our C-suite executives, our Chief Technology Officer, Chief Operation Officer, and our Chief Sales Officers actually all reside here in the Bay Area. So long-time local presence, starting with one of our first projects in the region down in San Jose. We've since grown our presence here in the Bay Area, beyond San Jose to Santa Clara, and are really looking forward to becoming a responsible member of the community of Hayward. As we can see here, these are our facilities, the 2 of which are built, and then Hayward is represented here, SVY 03A. We use code names for our global portfolio just to help communicate when we're referencing projects. Next slide, please. Here we can see, as Elizabeth mentioned, we're in the heart of the industrial corridor. In the Hayward General 2040 Plan, in the industrial and technology and innovation corridor sector, the intent is to really bring a blend of technology and forward-looking jobs to integrate with some of the manufacturing jobs in the area. A data center fits ideally within this thesis statement. Next slide, please. As Elizabeth was mentioning, we're right on Highway 92, and we knew that an elevated screening system for our substation and our switching station in partnerships with PG&E needed to be accomplished. The code minimum here is a metal corrugated panel, which is not something that we wanted to propose as a design that everyone coming across the Hayward-San Mateo 92 bridge is going to see when they enter or they're leaving Hayward. We really wanted to take this as an opportunity to lead with a great design intent in what I view really as an artistic expression of not just a screen, but of waves, of undulation, of movement. Here what we've shown is really the high water, what I'll call the high water mark of about 40 feet, and this completely covers the equipment. However, in the version that Elizabeth was showing, we do have the opportunity to perhaps create some more undulation, emulating waves on the top as well. However, that may leave some of the equipment exposed, some of the high voltage equipment exposed. And so here we wanted to show kind of the highest it would kind of ever be. And from that point, we're working with PG&E to see if we can create some of those dips and some of those undulations and really work to refine this. We explored a few other designs. However, this one proved to be the most aesthetically appealing for all of us and our design professionals that we work with, as well as accomplishing through the protruding as well as the right angle, really obstructing that view, while a lot of the other options just don't accomplish the design intent as well as the functionality. So we really wanted to, again, lead with something that was elevated, because this is how most of the community is going to interact with the data centers, is passing it by on 92. Next slide, please. As we began our design process over a year and a half ago, this is an example of the starting place of what a typical data center at the size of which we're building starts at. We knew, and across our portfolio, we want to really lead with positive design to the point where it doesn't look like a data center to the untrained eye. From the start, we began to challenge our design professionals to really elevate design beyond these, what we see here today and what we recognize around and some of the other product around the Bay Area. We really wanted to elevate that design. Next slide, please. This is a rendering, one of the renderings that you guys have seen, and this is just the jump from that original concept to some of these ideas that we were encouraging our design team and our architectural team to really pursue. Elizabeth called out a lot of these that are identified as part of the industrial design guidelines, but we also wanted to incorporate objects and design features that really represent kind of more of the office or other infrastructure building, hospital. And so here what we've done is introduced additional features such as faux windows. When they're passing by, it's a window that doesn't go to anywhere, but for someone's experience on the outside, it's now no longer a large facade of metal paneling. And again, the metal paneling is what we see typically on Class A offices or hospitals, as opposed to just EIFS or tilt-up concrete. Again, taking every opportunity here to really elevate design, so it's all a design that we're really proud of, and everyone that has a hand in it gets to be proud of this as well as it comes. Next slide, please. As we continue to work through planning staff feedback, as well as with CDC, of Mayor Salinas' challenge of, do better, make this as good as possible, we continue to iterate and really challenge our design professionals, which they, of course, love. They want the challenge. They want to design a project that they're proud of, and it's not just a commodity, right? This is a project that we're all going to be really proud of. And I can say with a straight face, a lot of data centers will do kind of one primary facade with less design features and kind of put, all concrete on one side or solid. this is one of the first projects in our portfolio where all 4 facades are elevated. So at any opportunity from investment production or looking from a neighboring project, neighboring property, you're going to see not a shortcut, but you're going to see that elevated design from every neighbor's perspective. With this, we continue to iterate, and even things such as the downspouts. We're looking at ways to really elevate a downspout. So it's not just a typical downspout, maybe add some color texture, maybe make that another material, all being cognizant of cost, but trying to elevate that design within the envelope that we have. Next slide, please. As Elizabeth mentioned, one of the biggest components that we have been accepting and working through feedback has been the public benefit package. We have been refining this package over the past year to ensure that the benefits that we're proposing are most impactful for the community. Not just the idea that we're putting forth, but a working discussion with the city, with staff, with you all, and with the CEDC. And so I'll just start from the top and kind of walk through how we've ideated around some of these. But again, these are all intended to be buckets that either the electeds or our leaderships from the various departments here would be able to deploy these contributions where most valuable or where most impactful. Starting off with the Gateway Marker Project, this was a program that was identified by the CEDC back in 2017. It was $250,000 identified for 4 signs, one of which being the foot pedestrian bridge as you come across Highway 92. I believe it was Welcome to Hayward, as well as a few other installations around the city. We would like to help bring that to fruition. And we realized that that was identified in 2017. Inflation's real. So we increased this up to $300,000. And again, this is not intended to say, please go forward with that 2017 plan. This is an opportunity to re-envision, engage local community, local artists, to really see what this marker project, this marker program would look like today or could look like. The next would be a city park contribution to La Vista. This is in addition to any off-site in lieu fees that we have for the trees that we can't replace. This is in addition to any of the park fees that we have as part of our standard course of development. And this additional $300,000 to go to La Vista. And if that already tops off that budget, it could be dispersed to the balance of park projects right now that are underway that are still securing financing. But this is identified for La Vista. The next would be $200,000 in partnership with ECDEV and Paul and the Win, identified first to split $100,000 each for #Hayward, as well as the facade improvement program. In discussing with some of our neighbors across the street, I was actually talking with Mohammed over at Crave Sub, and there's a sign that you can see from Highway 92, but just given the high voltage line and the complications to get there, a bunch of these businesses haven't been able to put their own signs up. Edgewater Pizza still has theirs. When the gentleman acquired the business, they acquired the name as well, so they have their name up there. None of the other businesses there do. And so when I was talking with Mohammed about the facade improvement program, I was thinking that's a really great idea of a way that we could create partnership with the city to help unlock a new signage improvement program that's already in place for Hayward. And so this is a great way that we can help to empower Paul Nguyen and the ECDEV team to really help out some of the local businesses around us as well as around the rest of the city of Hayward. Next, I'd like to talk about our contribution to the Hayward Unified School District. Originally, we had identified this as a contribution for essentially scholarships and for funding the administrative burden of the Hayward STEAM competition. In discussion with the superintendent, this may not be the most impactful, and so this is an opportunity for us to rely on our leaders. We conceptualized the STEAM competition and the scholarship as a good discussion or a good option. However, it may be more impactful for this to go towards laptops for 5th graders or ways to engage the city. And so this is another opportunity for us to rely on the superintendent to deploy that $100,000 most effectively within Hayward Unified School District. Next is with Public Works responding with staff. We did pivot this instead of city sustainability goals. This is $50,000 to be earmarked specifically for city bike and interconnection to the shore water paths, as well as the water treatment facility as part of the solar the solar project as part of the water facility retrofit. Next would be in discussion with East Bay Parks. We had originally identified as feedback from Councilmember Andrews to activate Eden Landing Ecological Reserve. In discussions with East Bay Parks, we identified that the Eden Landing Ecological Reserve isn't actually owned by the city, it's by the state. And maintenance and so on and cleanliness isn't managed by East Bay Parks. And so introducing food trucks, on a program basis may not be the most effective and most, wouldn't necessarily be the smartest thing to do for an ecological reserve protection agency area, for the for animals and for all of the foliage or anything on the Hayward shoreline. So instead of bringing people to the ecological reserve, this is going to be a partnership with Hayward ECDev to activate some of the food truck curb cuts that already exist. One over at the Heinz project over across the street, and Prologis also has another one. And so this is a way to not only activate Eden Landing, but some of these other food truck curb cut pavilions that have been already included as projects, but may not be activated yet. And so we thought this was a great way to, again, partner with ECDev and activate those existing food truck curb cuts, or work with Paul and the ECDev team to maybe deploy this as part of the facade improvement program or #Hayward. Last but not least is the Hayward Stack Community Center. Incredible coincidence with Stack. And so we thought this was a great opportunity and feedback from the CEDC to really look in deep into our budget and try and mine out the additional $100,000 to bring this up to the 1.3 with the final contribution to the Stack Community Center. And again, these are all, we wanted to come with concepts of how best these public benefits could be impacted to the community or deployed to the community. And we didn't want this to be prescriptive. We wanted this to be an opportunity for feedback from you all on some of these concepts that we have just gone over, feedback from you all on continued direction, or maybe an opportunity for us to pivot and redirect this to a more impactful area. So with that, I would just like to thank all of you for allowing us to come and present, to give you the update, and for allowing opportunity for you to provide us with feedback. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Are there any other presentations? Okay. Thank you very much for your presentation, Ms. Blanton. So at this time, this is the time where my colleagues get to ask questions. And actually, if you wouldn't mind coming back to the podium, we might have some questions that you might be able to answer if you're willing to do that.
Of course, yes, thank you.
Okay. So I would like to, I only have a couple of questions, so I wanted to, if my colleagues will let me go first this time, because I think I'll be pretty quick if I can find my spot. So my first question is, let's see, the screening. One of the things, and this might be more for you, Ms. Blanton, but though I don't even know if this is feasible, but the thing that came to mind when I was reading the materials was the library and how on the outside it says Unity. And I was wondering if it's possible to just say Hayward or something on the outside, if that's even a possibility with the materials.
Yeah, that's actually a concept, and Miles can speak to this as well, that we came across. You'll notice one of the images that we had, and it's actually in the other presentation, but one of the images that we had, which I'll bring up here, had some words across it. So that is a possibility. We, as a team, were wanting to make sure that if we were choosing specific words like Hayward or Unity, we were making sure that we weren't attaching that to a building that isn't specifically connected to Hayward, which is why then we kind of pivoted and said, okay, maybe it would be this gateway marker that's elsewhere on the overpass. But at the same time, I think the screening is probably the part I would say that we're really still in the middle of figuring out what is appropriate there. So having maybe not Hayward, but some words or some sort of images or something associated with it, I think that's something we could explore. And Miles, I don't know if you have anything to add from your perspective.
We did. We intended to explore, and when we landed on the product that we're deploying here for the screening, we discussed with the manufacturers if we could, orchestrate them in a way to, use either white panels or to paint them. And they had a lot of challenge with this. If we paint them, it violates and voids the manufacturer's warranty. And so we're going to still work through to see if we can basically, swap out for a white or a different color panel to create that texture of the writing. But it was something that we were ideating on early and challenged our manufacturer on that, and something that they pushed back on hard. We'll continue to ask to see if that's something that we continue to explore. It sounds like that's something that we want to. But our initial was a pushback from them on this specific, just because it starts to, as you add paint to any metals or any materials like that, it starts to compromise what they're putting out from the factory and makes it so they can't necessarily stand behind the product that they're putting out. And we're expecting them to, stand behind this for 10, 15, 20, 30 years and so on. Yep. But something we can absolutely continue to explore and challenge our manufacturers on.
Thank you very much. And then my second question, I think it'll be my last question, at least for a minute, is on page 6 of the sustainability plan, it talks about how the project owner shall participate in PG&E's regional renewable choice, AVA, community energy, renewable 100 for electricity accounts associated with the project, or participate in clean energy program that accomplishes the same goal of 100% carbon-free electricity. And I'm not even sure if this is the right question to ask, but what came to mind when I read that was, that sounds amazing. For how long? That's my question. Is that forever, or is that for a year, or how long?
We continue to revise and get more aggressive with our climate goals. Since our inception, STAC has been committed to 100% renewable energy, whether that's through our individual purchase through PG&E, or whether that's through offsetting with RECs, which is purchasing land for forestry, or offsetting those for renewable solar projects. And so whether it's directly through our fuel mix or through an offsetting program that helps to subsidize solar projects or wind projects, STAC is committed to 100% renewable energy. And as part of our sustainability plan, and we outlaid that essentially how we get there.
So, all right, just a little bit more simply, is it forever? I understand that right now
Yes.
that's your goal.
Yes. Yeah.
But is it a part of is it a condition of approval? Is it a?
We could certainly make it a condition of approval. It's something that, this is a PG&E program that has been in place for a long time. Lots of businesses in our community opt into it. I think, and I apologize, I'm not the utility expert, but I think it's becoming the default option in a lot of cases. So yeah, there's no reason why this wouldn't be in perpetuity. And we can certainly put a condition of approval in place to ensure that.
And we actually, our project will, and STAC does in that sentence, there's the or, which is the equivalent of the PG&E program. And so whether it's directly through PG&E's fuel mix or STAC individually, or our clients individually, we will achieve those goals. And so whether it's directly through the PG&E program or through one of the programs that we run nationally, just more efficient, we will achieve these goals.
One other thing I'll just quickly mention is it's very likely that this would be incorporated as a mitigation measure in the CEQA document. We as the city are not the lead agency, so I haven't seen a draft of this chapter yet, but that would be another way that this or something equivalent might be required for mitigation anyway.
Thank you both for answering my questions. Other commissioner questions? Commissioner Hardy? Oh, Commissioner Stephen, go ahead.
Thank you. So the design, the architectural design of the building, is it set up to blend in and not have the appearance of a data center for security purposes?
No, not necessarily. It's more for the community, for passerbyers. We don't want to have a project that's perceived as an eyesore at STAC. We want to have a project that's perceived as the most attractive data center you've ever seen. Yeah.
And then from the perspective, a data center, the property owner pays property taxes.
Correct. Yep.
as well as the tenants that operate equipment pay property taxes on their equipment, correct?
Correct, yep,
And that's a fairly significant number for a data center of this size, correct?
correct, yep,
Thank you.
yep.
Commissioner Goodbody.
Thank you for the staff for your presentation on this, and to you for bringing all this information and this proposal to us. My questions are regarding the growth of, have to do with the growth of cloud computing. It's moving fast, and so my question is regarding the sustainability plan. I know that you went into great detail to put that document together, and I'm wondering if, during either the CEQA review or mitigation process, if there is a requirement, or is there best practices when these data centers become obsolete, or when they're sold, or when they're repurposed? Is there a decommissioning plan or some sort of a sustainability plan when they are closed down or shut down, so that we don't have this, abandoned building in our community? I don't know anything about
Yeah.
that, and I'm wondering if you could
I can
talk
share.
about that.
Yeah, typically we structure, and again, as owner and landlord, we're structuring leases with data center operators. The initial terms on these leases are typically 15 years with additional, 10-year options to renew. And so even just on that initial term, it'll be a 20 to 30-year commitment. Beyond that, these facilities now, even the ones that were built, 20, 30, 40 years ago, are now becoming so necessary for cloud growth that we actually, I have personally never seen a decommissioned data center. I've seen a lot of other buildings be retrofitted to become data centers, but we haven't seen that type of decommissioning, just because the need currently outpaces the supply of actual, of data centers coming online, to the point now where, having to, data's having to travel long distances. And that's latency. That's why it takes longer for something to load on your computer. For decommissioning, with the sustainability plan, we can absolutely look at some of the best practices of, at the end of a, useful life cycle, the 99-year. For Stack, we will continue to own this facility and, retrofit it to bring it forward to your current standards for the lifetime of this facility, beyond, what's perceived as, depreciated 27 and a half years. But that's absolutely something that we can conceptualize together on our side of, if and when and Moore's Law accelerates to the point to where, we don't need to, all the computers have gone so small that, and that's not where it's actually heading in the other direction, where the computing is getting more and more intense, just the use loads that we're putting on. But we can look and provide, in the event of no need for data centers, which, again, I don't believe is to happen in our lifetimes, or even, the next century, what that would look like. And so that we can talk through that appropriate plan of a decommissioning. We'd be happy to conceptualize that with the city.
Thank you for that. And then I do support the gateway, like some sort of a welcome gateway across the 92 overpass. I think that location makes sense. And in terms of the screening, I would just encourage you to, I don't have a problem with I really like the waves and the undulation and the movement in the screening. I think I would encourage you to maybe consider your immediate neighbor, which is the Bay Trail. And maybe instead of blue, maybe some shades of green, or some more earthy tones to sort of, continue the movement that the Bay Trail has right next door. That's the only comment that I have on the screening.
Thank you.
Commissioner questions? Commissioner Hardy.
Thank you, Chair Lowe, and thank you, staff, for the presentation and developer presentation. Also, thank you to staff for answering my many questions that I posed. I do have some more follow-up questions to that in order to, give my opinion on the public benefit proposal and the parking reduction. So the first question is just to get clarity on the amount of parking that would be required. So in the staff report, it said that 1,311 spaces would be required, and there would be 63. That was on pages 3 and 5 of the staff report versus like what's presented in the staff presentation. So I just want to know which one is correct.
I apologize if there was an error in that. The square footages of the buildings have shifted slightly, so I'm guessing since a version of the staff report was written early, I probably inadvertently left the old figure in. I
Okay.
believe the number on the screen is correct.
Okay, just a note, because I may reference the wrong number later.
Okay,
So
okay. We'll
that's
note
why
that
I
that is
wanted to
my
be
error,
sure.
not your error.
But just know that, yeah,
Yes.
I'm referring
Yes.
to what's correct. And then a question around, I saw that for the public benefit package, it said that staff had a recommendation, a proposal for, it was $350,000, this was in the staff report, replacing, it said, the city's sustainability goals, and it's, or to combine them. I think it was $200,000 for the Phase B solar power and $150,000 for a bicycle and pedestrian facilities. Is that in addition to the 1.3, or are you just changing the layout of what is here?
That's a good question. In staff's perspective, and I'm somewhat speaking for the Public Works Department here, so Kyle and Stephen, who might be online, can jump in if they would like to, but we don't want to take away anything because we think all of these programs are necessary and great for the community. In really thinking about that sustainability piece, the $100,000 that the applicant has identified towards sustainability goals and awareness, we as staff try to think about, okay, where could that money be channeled most effectively? Our Public Works team came up with these two projects, the Eden Greenway project and then the solar panels on the water resource recovery facility. I believe that's correct. And the amount, in order to make a more of a substantial difference, we thought instead of $100,000, $350,000 might be more appropriate. So I'd say ideally that would be in addition, but it would be $250,000 in addition. But again, at the end of the day, staff, we're not decision makers on this, so we're actually relying on the Planning Commission to say, what do you think is appropriate for the public benefits? Do you think it's swapping something out? Do you think it's adding something on? That's our question for you tonight.
Thank you. So perfectly segue to what I actually think might be a good, and this is partially some of it I'll probably save for comments because it's not so much a question, but it seems that, and I'd asked about whether there was a methodology or a calculation for how these amounts were determined. And so now seeing that there wasn't really one, it was based on a project from 2011, 13 years ago. Like, I really do think that there's room for even more increase.
In
than what we're seeing.
2021, it was from 3 years ago.
Oh, it's, okay, I'll check my notes there again. I thought it said that that project was in 2011.
This is the Heinz project that was referenced earlier that was approved. It came in 2019. It was approved in 2021.
Okay. Okay, I'll look for where I saw something. Thank you for that. So again, I guess I'll save my actual like recommendation on what I think it should be, but also it is interesting to see what HAPSA also recommended. And so just know that that's something I'm definitely thinking about. So I have a question just in general about the alternative parking plan. So when I looked at the layout, and this may be a question for you, it looked like that's a plan for if there were no generator yard. Is that correct?
Correct. The city's parking and sorry, Miles, I'll let you jump in, but the city's parking requirements for the industrial district really recognizes that there are a range of industrial uses that could be coming into these sites. So while they are requesting a parking exception that makes sense for them, we're like, what if this isn't a data center in the future? You know, to get back to that decommission question, would you be able to accommodate parking for a different type of use that would require more employees there? So in that scenario, the generator yard wouldn't be there. That would be removed, so there would be that additional space. So that plan is basically showing if we were to convert this site to something else, we could still accommodate additional parking on site. So it's a city requirement that they prepared that.
Okay, thank you. I had another question around the height requirement. So throughout most of the staff report and the presentation, it talks about 100 feet. There was one mention of something that is 108 feet, and could someone speak to what
It's
that
the
is and
elevator
where that is?
penthouse. Yeah,
Yeah.
on top of that elevator. Yeah.
You can see in this image here on the right, there's that little like mechanical kind of, that's the 108. Our code has allowances to have additional height for things like that mechanical equipment. So technically, you know, like the FAA would say the height is 108, but per our code, the height to the top of that parapet is 100 feet. So since they're allowed to have that additional height for mechanical equipment, we consider the exception that they're requesting to be from 75 to 100.
Thank you. Just out of curiosity, what would be housed in the security building?
Personnel.
Security
Yeah,
personnel?
personnel, people, screens, monitoring. This is going to be, there'll be personnel on site 24/7, controlled access and through passage gate, as well as we get into the facility, there's different layers of security. To be honest, once we actually commission these data halls, people like me and Stack, you know, if we don't have a reason to be inside these data halls, we don't go in there. And so security is tight for a reason to keep everything secure. And here we'll have, it's about 1,600 square feet, where we'll have full-time personnel. They'll be monitoring the facility, they'll be monitoring the proximity. And then also we have, there's a couple of break rooms. There's one there where we have a nice area. You can actually kind of see the walking area here that we have by the stormwater basin. We enhance that so that people have a place to have lunch and, you know, can rest on their break. But that's the activation that's happening right there.
So then the majority of staff, or potentially all of the staff that will be on site here, is security?
No.
Okay.
There'll be a couple in the security building, but primarily there'll be operations, managing electrical loads, managing compute, making sure everything in the facility is going great, making sure all of the fans are running, making sure all the lights are working, making sure all of the computers are running well.
So then another question just around attachment, I think it was 6, talks about the electricity demand to cool the server rooms. And so what would happen if the server rooms aren't properly cooled? And is that the purpose of all of the diesel generators, is to keep those rooms cool?
I'll let Miles take this one.
So even the computers on our desks are running hot, right? There's a fan that's pumping out the hot air. Assuming we bring in 100% of the power. For this facility, about 1/5 of that power is going to go towards cooling the equipment. And that's just to make sure, you know, the computers don't melt down, right? And making sure that everything stays online. The generators only come on in the event of an emergency. Given the critical nature of this facility and what is actually run on the cloud, we can't go down. If we do go down, we're shifting load across the nation, but we have a generator facility here to power in the amount of a grid outage. And so what we have here is the ability to power ourselves for a 24-hour standpoint. Hospitals will go for 2 days. We're assuming a 1-day redundancy. And so we have redundancy for all of these instances of failure so that our day-to-day doesn't get impacted by these data centers. It's all happening behind the curtain. So we'll have backups for generators, we'll have backups for our cooling, we'll have backups for our computers. So there'll be an idle, dormant, just in case there's an issue with one of the computers, they instantly switch over, and then our telecom doesn't go down, our video conference doesn't go down. And so the generators are specifically there in the event of a PG&E grid outage, which is extremely rare, does not happen often, but in the event that it does, we're prepared for it.
And I'll add to that quickly, Miles, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I believe there's also like a monthly emergency generator test. The CEQA document will analyze both of those instances and will make sure that it's mitigating the emissions that would be a result of both.
That's correct. Yeah, we will turn them on, essentially, on a program monthly basis, just to make sure that, just like the car in your garage, you're making sure it doesn't, idle over the winter. Turn them on so that when we need them, we know that they're working. And I didn't mention this, but these are tier 4 generators. So the most efficient generators that exist, essentially these generators have on their stacks have a catalytic converter helping to scrub the emissions that are going out. And we also use renewable fuel as well. So commitment on both of those, just the most efficient and cleanest that we can. We complete studies on our side to evaluate batteries or like natural gas, like with Bloom. However, just given the requirements that we have, the generators are the only thing that are meeting our clients' needs right now. And so we are leading the market on alternatives for batteries or for fuel cells. However, right now, the only thing that our clients are accepting is generators.
And my last question right now is just around this being a thermal power plant, which I believe is what CEC called it. Are there considerations that you all take into account when you're selecting a site for this, like proximity to a fire station, or are you ever like concerned, like if you're too far away, or like is that something that is thought about just with such a large facility with so much
We have
hazardous?
incredible fire mitigation on site ourselves, just with our own systems. Location selection here was a combination of things. This is actually in COVID. It was the middle of COVID. The site was unfortunately 60% vacant, and the owner was vacating. It was, and so that's an opportunity that came for us, and we're right next door to the East Shore PG&E power plant. Excuse me, not power plant. Switching station, and so proximity to partnership with PG&E is very important, which is why another reasons why this site lends well to power. We actually, you can kind of see it here, for better or for worse, about a fifth of our project site is taken up by PG&E overhead easements, where the Grand East Shore 115 kV line is passing. And so it's on the bottom, you can see kind of by our drive aisle. That's why all of our structures are really compressed to the top, kind of 4/5 of the site. And another reason why we really weren't able to spread out, we had to go vertical here, instead of a 2-story or even a 1-story sprawling. Just like office buildings around the Bay Area, just like apartment buildings, we're being forced to go up because land, even though this is an 11-acre site, once we start building these large facilities, there's not a lot of land to spare. And so in this situation, the Bay Area is one of the few markets that we actually do this, and a lot of our other, where you saw on the globe, these are 200 acres, single-story, sprawling properties, where here in urban core areas, we need to go vertical. Again, just like office buildings, just like apartment buildings, vertical density. Yep.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Miles, and thank you, Senior Planner Blanton. So I have quite a few questions. I was waiting towards the end so that some of them could be shifted off of my paper. When I look at projects like this, I try to look at it from the perspective of a year down the road, if something should happen, the neighbors say, well, did you ask this? And did you ask that? I look at it from a community perspective to see what might be in the best interest of the community in many different aspects of what maybe could happen, and did we address it at the time. And I also met with you guys on Zoom. Thank you for that. I thought that was very beneficial and helpful last month. So I'm going to ask probably some of the same questions. I'll try to breeze over them as best I can, but it's from a lot of different perspectives here. So the first one was answered regarding the 108 feet. Yeah, I was thinking it might have been the air handler, but it sounds like it's the elevator shaft. Is that right?
Yeah, elevator penthouse. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Oh, okay. Okay, good. I see that we have a lot of the electric vehicle charging spots, and I also see that we have some ADA parking. Do we have any electric spots for the ADA?
I believe so, yes.
I didn't see them on the plans.
I think we have one ADA van as well. I believe it's dictated by a report. A certain, as you exceed, you have a certain proportion that go to ADA, a certain proportion that go to ADA EV, and a certain proportion that go to ADA van as well. Okay. I believe I think we're a total of 68 now. I believe that gets us over the threshold where we have included we of course make sure we meet all of the
Sure.
code requirements. But
I
yeah,
saw the chart, and I was trying to look on the blueprints, and I couldn't see an identifier where it
Mhm.
was, so I just wanted to make sure that we did include that.
I can follow up with you on that.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
I'll just add quickly, Cal Green, part of the building code, those are the folks that ensure that we're meeting those requirements. So sometimes there's not quite as much detail in the planning set that we're looking at now, but we would be sure that that would be included in the building permit set when it comes in.
Excellent, thanks. And then also, some of the requirements call for EV-ready spots and actually having a charger. Are all of our 68, I believe it is, having the charger itself? Or are they just EV-ready?
We have 68 total. I believe of the EV ready, I think we went forward with making them all. I'll have to follow up with you on that one specifically for the proportion of EV day one and the proportion of EV ready. I believe we went ahead and made them all EV from the onset.
Okay.
But I don't believe that every single parking stall is EV right now.
Okay, and
Yeah,
and
of the
that makes
68,
sense that
yeah,
it isn't. But
yeah.
the ones that are EV-ready, I was hoping that they might have the chargers
I believe,
already.
I believe we already went ahead and initiated for the day one.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me follow up with you on that. Thank you to verify.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I know that we had one email from a tenant that I believe is not there anymore. So I've driven by the site, and it looks almost like nobody's there. Is it
Right.
true that there's no tenants there anymore?
It's fully vacant right now. Yeah, and there was one of our tenants that was expressing hardship. So with them, with our property manager CIP, we helped to identify an upstream location for them. We also waived a few back months of rent to help ease the transition as they were moving out. And so these were just a few things that, as we continued the conversations and as folks reached out, we were able to respond accordingly, help out, and ease the transition off-site for those that needed it in those specific situations.
Okay,
Yep.
terrific. That's good news. Okay, if we talk, I know you mentioned there are Tier 4 generators, and I briefly talked about this on the Zoom. And I know that I was asking about the biofuels, and you did say that you're using some. But that will be always, is that correct?
Correct.
And then do you actually know yet what your monthly testing will look like such as time and duration and maybe noise levels? Do we have that yet?
We do, yeah. It'll be, I believe we ramp them up to over about a 30-minute period. We're ramping them up to up about 100%, turn it off and on to the next one. And that's spread out over a month-long process so that they're each being turned on. But this is included in our small power plant exemption in our CEC application, which as lead agency they run for their secret document. But that program is included in there, and that's what we'll follow. It's typical for, it's a very typical programmatic schedule that is from Caterpillar as the manufacturer of these generators. That's what they, on their owner's manual, that's the program that they have.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
And the CEQA document would look at both the noise and the greenhouse gas. So it would take into account both and make sure it's not exceeding thresholds.
And would we be looking at the decibel levels as well, or
Correct.
the effect?
Yep.
Okay.
Correct.
Perfect.
It's considered from the property line. So if you were standing on the property line, that's kind of the threshold that they consider.
Okay, sweet. That's good. And I know we briefly talked before about maybe the inconvenience to the neighboring businesses. Is there a way to mitigate that? Have you reached out to them? I spoke to the owner of Edgewater, and I think they're kind of excited also about maybe some new business, which is great.
Absolutely, yeah. I've spoken with all of them. I need to link back up with Paul to start working together on #Hayward as well as the facade improvement program for those across the street. But yeah, Edgewater, another one.
Mohammed.
Discussing with them, we're able to share that once we do start construction, we'll have about 350 to 400 construction workers for the first 2 years. Huge wave of new business, followed by another couple hundred as our client is fitting out the interior data halls. It should be another 300-400. And then ourselves will have about 35 to 40 full-time employees, and then additional vendors that are coming to site. As we look at some of our other projects in the area, the 35 to 40 are direct roles, and then we have another 35 to 40 that are indirect for some of the vendors that come to site, landscaping, things like that, that are indirect jobs that are also coming. So right now, I've discussed with them, with fenced up across the street, it's a challenge. Business is slower right now.
Right.
And so they're all very excited to see the huge, large influx of not only construction workers, but some of the great local, well-paying jobs for the long-term employees as well.
And have you discussed or thought of any ways to mitigate the inconvenience during construction? We're not going to have like any access issues?
No, not from them across the street. Yeah, we'll be on our side. We're actually, for our construction logistics, we're actually only having, like for our pedestrian access off of Eden Landing, everything else for the trucks is coming off of investment in production, so that we're staying away from the bike lane there and making sure that there's no large, tractor trailers that are coming by competing with the bike lane when someone's on a bicycle. So that was a big thing with our general contractor HIT that we worked on early to make sure that all of their site logistics worked for, preserving and protecting the bike lane there. And then as with that, we'll also be avoiding the business park there too,
Okay,
since we'll
good,
be more active on investment and production.
Yeah, okay, that's good, thank you. So what I have worked previously in data centers, I mentioned it before, and we used to joke that, these are really important businesses, that if there was ever going to be a takedown of our network, we were a target. I don't think it's the case, but I just want to verbally ask, we're not putting a target on West Hayward, are we, in any form?
Not at all, no.
No?
No, and I think that was a question earlier too. We ourselves protect the perimeter. Our clients are experts in protecting technology. And so with the physical as well as the technology security, it's a huge deterrent. It's not something that, from our experience or from being active as data center developers around the globe, is of cause for concern.
Okay.
But hearing it from you all will make sure that we stay vigilant, alert, and make sure that we're doing everything that we can to ensure that there's no security issues.
Mm-hmm.
This is also led by extreme confidentiality. We don't expose the public who is actually operating in that facility, and so that also helps to prevent what would be in there. It may be a bunch of pictures, right? It may be health records, right? And so that blend and anonymity, as well as the ability to shift that to another facility, or for if something else was compromised with a hurricane, they could shift load over to this facility, enables you to protect against those security concerns.
Okay. We talked about AVA already, and I like that. I would like to talk real quick about the water towers. I believe you have 4 1,000-gallon tanks. Is that about right?
They are, I believe they're just over 40,000 each.
Oh,
And-
40,000.
Correct, yep. And this is, again, for redundancy. There's two primarily technologies that we're using nowadays for cooling off the computers. This facility will use direct evaporative cooling, and so it introduces some water. It uses that water 3 times, and then some of it's discharged. These water tanks are there first in the event of a outage of no water being available from the city. It's also in the event of needing to utilize the water for cooling during a peak water event, such as middle of the day, 8 a.m., 5 p.m., some of these times when everyone's running their faucets. So less demand on the actual utility itself, and we can pull from water that we have preserved for us on site. So ways that we can lessen the burden on city infrastructure by building into it for ourselves.
Okay, and my question, I guess, is about recycled water. I understand, at least I read in there, that their ammonia and maybe the alkali or something makes it not conducive to this evaporative system, but there's a way that you can incorporate that in the future when the infrastructure comes in. Does that sound about right?
Correct, yep, we're ready for it. So right now, we try and implement as much recycled water to our facilities as possible. We studied the water here, and unfortunately, the composition of water will rapidly deteriorate some of the heavy metals that we have that the water is flowing through, just the composition. And so we'll be prepared in the event that the water is to a level that we're able to utilize it. Unfortunately, right now, we're essentially using industrial water. And so we'll we're ready for that in the future at the point when that water is acceptable for use from our clients.
Is there a way to maybe add chemicals or do something to the water so that you can use recycled water instead of, because I just foresee droughts in the future and these are large tanks?
I think right now, and I know that there is an ongoing retrofit of the water facility here in Hayward.
Okay.
So I know that I think it's more on the front end of the water treatment versus additional additives in that scenario. But again, something that we'll continue to work on with our water consultants, and I know the city has excellent consultants as well that are working through these challenges.
And
I'll
it-
also add, just quickly, the purple pipe infrastructure that we have is phased in the city. So far, everything has been north of Highway 92, so it's something we've actually talked about internally with staff. In the future, that would be great. We're not quite set up to do that now, but I think and I'm looking over at Kyle from Utilities, I think ideally, the city in the long term would like to extend that purple pipe infrastructure to accommodate some of these water-intensive uses to the south of the freeway as well.
Excellent. Yeah, excellent. And if you were to use it, would you still be able to use the triple cycle or however you called it with the water?
I'll have to, I believe so. I'll have to defer to some of the technical folks on my team on that,
Okay.
but I believe so, yes. Yeah.
Okay. I'm almost done. Talking parking. So I know that we want to reduce our parking, and we use the Clawwitter Data Center as an example to create the multiplier. The Clawwitter Data Center hasn't been around very long. Do we know that multiplier number is adequate? I mean, have we thought of using any other existing data centers with a lot more history to see what the multiplier is?
The multiplier number to come up with the parking demand, you mean
Yes.
for the
Per
data?
square
For the
feet.
data center?
Yes.
Yeah, I would say the data that Kimley Horn is relying on is pretty consistent across data centers. We have a few here in Hayward, and there are many, obviously, in California and across the world. It is just a use that does not require a lot of vehicles. There's not a lot of people that need to work there. They work in shifts, so even earlier, even earlier when I said, there's 33 employees per day, they're not there all at the same time. So the 68 spaces envisioned really is more. I would almost say significantly more than is anticipated to be needed on site. So even if there was, I don't know, something where they did, for example, one day overlap the shifts in a different way and needed a little bit of extra parking, that's already accommodated on site.
Okay.
So staff feels comfortable with that reduction number. This is exactly the type of use that exception in the code is for. Even
Sure.
though we consider data centers to be an office use in our code, obviously there's going to be fewer people here than a traditional office use. So we would rather not see a bunch of empty parking spaces. We would rather see, the buyer retention and some of the other things on site instead.
Right, that makes perfect sense. I just want to double check because whenever time I had guys there, I had anywhere between 2 and a dozen guys per co-location site. With construction ongoing, because I assume you'll have it kind of always a cell or two growing, you still feel confident with that parking?
We do, yeah. And we actually studied one of our facilities that's fully operational now in North San Jose,
Okay.
and looked back to see at that facility, was there ever a parking jam or anything? And we didn't come across that, the same
Okay.
parking ratios.
Super. Okay, and my last thing for now is, this is kind of a clarification for me because I'm not real sure about this. The CEC determined that the project could qualify for a small power plant exemption. Does the exemption say yay or nay to it, or does it give some kind of benefit to you? Anyway.
Yeah, I can generally let Miles answer that question. I'll say the reason I added some of that information in the staff report, it's unusual that we would have a project where we are not the lead agency for the CEQA. Normally, I, as the project manager of the project, would be the person coordinating with our CEQA consultant to prepare this document. Because of specifics in state law that says technically this is considered a small thermal plant, there is a special exception that the STAC team is applying for. So because that's all in place, the CEC has to lead the CEQA process, essentially. But Miles, you can talk more about that exemption you're applying for.
That's spot on. Yeah, once you exceed 50 megawatts of backup generating facility capacity, the state looks at us as a power plant. And so until you exceed 100 megawatts, that's when you become a full-scale, large-scale power plant, like a natural gas plant. And so by staying below that, we're able to qualify as a small power plant. And through the running of our CEQA process with this California Energy Commission as the lead agency, we aim to determine, less than significant impact, and they will grant an exemption from the full permitting of the power plant to enable the city of Hayward to go forward with building permits and entitlement. If we went forward with a large-scale power plant, the CEC would have jurisdiction over the full site. And that's, typically how, like for Calpine, a project would be developed.
Okay.
Yep.
And then I guess one last thing. I know solar, there is a generating option, but as much power as you need, it's probably not feasible. They have megawatt battery systems. Have you guys considered that, or is that still not something that's feasible?
It's, for right now, at the scale, it's just not feasible.
Because of the space?
Yeah, and we are right now studying roof. We are currently solar ready and working to see if there's ways that we can integrate additional solar. We just really tap for space.
Right.
And so, unfortunately, the scale at which we would need to have solar and battery on site is just not feasible, and the reliability for the 24-hour period just wouldn't be an option. Yeah.
Okay, that's it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Myers. Any other? Commissioner Hammond?
Yes, hello. First, I appreciate all the time and effort you guys have been putting into this project, and including city staff. For the record, I also met with you on October 30th. It was a good meeting, and it gave me a little deeper insight on your project and your goals. Some of my questions are apart from the feedback you're asking from us. And it might piggyback a little bit for some of the other questions that the commissioners have asked. So let me see. From what I've read, your data centers consume a lot of power. Will this affect the power grid for the city?
Will not.
Okay. You already mentioned that there would not be any potential dangers to the community or the city.
No.
And then, so a question also, will this be creating any jobs for the residents of Hayward? Like, for instance, what is when we talked before, you mentioned this would be a union project. Would you be using local union labor? Is there a percentage of that?
Let me get back to you on that. I'll talk with our general contractor HIT on that about the pool that they're pulling from, but it is the local benches, yes.
And then would you also perhaps be buying your materials locally?
We would be, yeah.
Okay, very good. It was also mentioned that you'll be paying property tax. Are there any sales tax generated?
There are, yeah. So all of these computers are just like the computers that we're buying, just at a much more industrial level. So all of this, it'll be sales tax as our clients are purchasing these millions of dollars of computers, as well as personal property tax or unsecured property tax. That City of Hayward, I believe, is about 16% of the total millage that Alameda is taxing. So extremely favorable for the City of Hayward, really high percentage of property tax that goes to you guys as well. And so with that, not only on the structure itself, but the equipment that's being installed, as well as refreshed, every 4 to 5 years as newer equipment becomes available or as that equipment reaches the end of its life cycle. Again, new purchases, new sales tax.
Okay, and then are there going to be any continuous opportunities for employment for local Hayward residents?
Absolutely, yeah. And for example, down our operating facilities in San Jose, a lot of those folks are near and close to the facility. And so we really encourage everyone nearby. And we actually, in the East, we actually have programs where we will go into some of the high schools or community college to explore career paths of how to get some of these great high-paying jobs that we have inside of our data center facilities.
Okay, very good. Some of my other questions might be kind of combined with my comments.
Okay.
So Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other commissioner questions? Sure. Go ahead, Commissioner.
He made me think of one last question I missed here. With the large power consumption demand and the potential for rolling blackouts, will it take precedence, your power usage, over, let's say, residential usage during these blackout periods? And will it create more blackout periods? And if there is a blackout period, does your company or your business take like precedent or have a higher priority than, say, some of the other businesses or residents?
That's a great question. I believe it was in summer of 2020, there was a high heat event when Governor Newsom actually called around to the data center operators and asked them to essentially turn on some of their generators to reduce load from the grid. And what this enabled to do, and this was, again, a high heat event where everyone has their ACs on, this was an opportunity to actually eliminate blackouts by reducing the load on data centers. Santa Clara had previously done this a couple years ago as well, but an opportunity to preserve the normal continuity of the grid by having a data center operate in an emergency event. We weren't, obviously, this facility wasn't built yet. San Jose was not asked to participate in that, and Santa Clara wasn't operational, so we did not ourselves participate in that program. But in that event, that was a great example of when residential will take priority, and the data center market and coalition will work together with the state or with the city to make sure that we're managing collectively to ensure that residents and other businesses are not impacted.
Okay, and you kind of expect that same scenario in the future potentially? You don't know of any priority system or anything?
I think CAISO and PG&E have been doing a really great job of retrofitting and future planning to eliminate some of these issues. A lot of that is just bulk import from out of state. And so with some of these larger infrastructure programs that they have been developing, should help eliminate a lot of this. Now, will it eliminate all blackouts during high heat events? I don't think so, because there's still going to be areas outside, even outside of our local transmission area, that have transmission constraints. When everyone turns their ACs on and everyone has their lights on at 7 p.m. is going to force that, and it may be on a completely separate area of the grid than data center, to where we can't help out in that situation. Sure. But I think that with the attention and the drive that PG&E and CAISO have been doing to retrofit ongoing, and they have an approved project with a group called Ellis Power to bring in 2 massive DC lines to really bring additional power to the market to alleviate all of these pressure situations.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Any other commissioner questions? All right, thank you, Mr. Kirsten.
Thank you.
So the public is now invited to comment on this item. We will begin with Louis Andrade.
Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Louis Andrade. I'm a board member on the Hayward Recreation and Park District. I just want to, our ask is simple. It's a request that the Interpretive Center, the Shoreline Interpretive Center, which is a Hayward asset and a Park District asset, be specifically carved out and granted funds. We think that the $300,000 park match contribution, which I believe from background I've heard is targeted towards La Vista. There are enough funds for La Vista. It doesn't need to be targeted for that. And we think that we could use it here. We've already invested quite a bit of money in the new roof and siding. And the idea there is to have a sea level rise, emphasis on sea level rise at its interpretive center. We host hundreds of field trips for children. So there's a lot of community interaction there and education going on at that location. So we're just asking that from one of these pots that we specifically carve out the interpretive center as where they have it. There is a nexus, it's the closest facility to this project. And, it's a shoreline facility right there. It's very visible. And I think enhancing that would help the image of Hayward and would also, just actually serve the community, a larger community as well, and children in the education community. So that's our basic ask. So thank you. If there's any questions. Okay.
Seeing none, thank you very much, Mr. Andrade. Sarah Lamnin.
Good evening, Chair and Commission and staff, and to the applicant. Thank you for all the work on this. I really do appreciate the questions and the work to create this, and of course the interest and investment in this community. I noticed that HARD is not specifically listed in the application, and perhaps not everybody knows about us. So I'll build on my colleagues' comments by saying we are the recreation district for this area. And we are a separate entity, but really looking forward to even more collaboration with the city. And I think this is a great opportunity for that. So looking at the proposed public benefits, you know, when I was on council, I remember the Gateway project. I know some of those goals have been met by other projects, so I think re-looking at is still $300K the right amount for that. And then in terms of the city park, really, that should be a hard park, and specifically as Director Andrade mentioned, the Shoreline Interpretive Center, La Vista, is funded, and the opportunity to put an education center, which is what our goal is for that Shoreline Interpretive Center, have free field trips, to have education about sea level rise and climate, meets both the city's education city goals as well as the city's very laudable sustainability practice and goals, as well as our goals. So I think that's really where that money needs to go. Both the city park and the HASPA should go to the shoreline, my opinion. And the small business grant program, I appreciate that. I think I would personally love to see that be an ongoing contribution, like the Amazon World Service grant is, an ongoing project. And perhaps that helps further the internet infrastructure that a lot of our small businesses have been struggling with. Similarly, I support the solar recommendation. But also think about the recycled water infrastructure, and is this a chance to further that in the same way that hopefully we can further the internet infrastructure. Certainly a big fan of trails, and again, this is a place for HARD and the city to work together. We have a trails master plan. The East Bay Regional Park District was mentioned, and is of course also a partner, as they are a big property owner in the area. Personally, the height and the parking requirements sound great. The food truck area, I really wonder about because there are existing restaurants in the area, and I wouldn't want to damage them. In terms of artwork, you know, activating the trails with public art in that way, I think can meet council's public art goals, as well as making those interactive and furthering the activation of the trails. Lastly, I noticed that the project is listed as solar ready, and to Commissioner Meyer's point about having those EV charging stations installed already, I think this is an opportunity to also go ahead and install the solar, not just make it solar ready. Thank you very much for your time.
Ms. Allen, are there any further public comments?
There are no other public commenters.
Thank you. At this time, I will close public comments, and I will open it up for my colleagues to discuss the items. Do any of the commissioners have any comments? Commissioner Goodbody.
Thank you, Chair. I first want to just thank everyone for coming out today, and those that aren't are joining us on Zoom or YouTube, and those who submitted their comments. I really appreciate it, and it really informs you know, comments and just perspective, you know, when considering applications. In terms of the public benefits proposal, I think that this body or the city council, or perhaps maybe an ad hoc committee, could really benefit from sort of carving that out and unpacking it to realize efficiencies, and to what extent some of the proposals could be benefited by matching grants, could be leveraged. So if you could pull up the benefit proposal. So for example, the Eden Landing Ecological Reserve the city's sustainable goals and awareness and the HASPA items, might be able to converge on a couple of projects and combine the funds. Ms. Lamden mentioned or Director Andrade, I think, mentioned the education center at the interpretive center. This would be a really good opportunity to actually do something about sea level rise. I don't know, didn't see anything in that, but it's something that concerns me, and I think that if we could find a way through this process to line up funds to address sea level rise, it would be a good add to that area. So that's just my comment on the public benefit proposal. There's lots of worthy causes, but I'm wondering if we could, combine them in a way that we could, do it in phases, or we can come together on some sort of another package and just kind of unpack this to actually see what's shovel ready and what, hasn't been determined yet by each of these agencies. I do support believe that the proposal is sufficient to warrant the height increase. My concern was over the flight path, but the staff had mentioned that comment before, so I'm satisfied with that. I do support the parking reduction. I think it's sufficient for this project. And then I gave my comments about the building design and the artistic screening to follow the interpretive center, the Bay Trail that's nearby. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Goodbody. Commissioner Stephen?
Thank you. I have one quick question for staff before I comment. I'm still confused about something. So because we don't meet the building height of 75 feet and we're 25 feet higher than that, we are asking for public benefits to allow for that. And so I heard somebody mention nexus. How do you correlate public benefits and dollars? It seems very confusing and very convoluted to me.
Yeah, it's something that was, the only place that something like this exists is in our industrial code. When the industrial design guidelines and the industrial zoning regulations were updated back in 2019, I think we were just starting to see some of these taller industrial uses, not just data centers, but sometimes multi-story warehouse buildings, and it seemed like there might be taller buildings in the future. So I believe the intent of those regulations of putting this provision in there was to allow flexibility for that, to say, generally speaking, 75 is the cap. However, if there is a specific use that requires a higher building, we're going to give decision makers the power to negotiate about that, to say, okay, if you're going to have this taller structure that's going to be more visible in our community, here are some additional things that we're going to ask for as a trade-off for that. It looks like our planning manager wants to add something.
I was just going to clarify also that we do have this elsewhere in the code, and that's when an applicant is requesting to rezone to a planned development, to a PD district. We do require community benefits, and there needs to be, when you're deviating from an adopted community plan and you're doing something that deviates from a development standard, there is that provision in the code, and that it is really somewhat subjective. It's really up for the decision-making body, as Elizabeth pointed out, to demonstrate and determine whether or not it's suitable. I know this commission has entertained not so recently, a planned development project in the community, and one of the things that was brought before the commission was the trade-off, like what if we're going to be rezoning to PD and deviating from its typical development standard in order to benefit the applicant, is there a community benefit that they can provide in exchange? And so we do see that pretty frequently with planned development rezonings, and this is, it's not a specific rezoning, but it is it's not a variance per se, but it is a quasi. If you're going above a standard, there needs to be an intrinsic, inherent, like community something back, to kind of make it worth it for the community. So. But there is another location in our code where we do have that codified.
So thank you for that. So just to hear me out for a second. So does a quote public benefit or community benefit, does it have like a definition?
No, it's left pretty nebulous. It's something we've actually talked about internally with staff now that we've had a few of these projects come in that have tried to invoke this exception to say, do we want to create more of a structure for how we would calculate this and determine what is sufficient findings or something like that that could help us make this determination. But as of now, it's pretty nebulous. But I can say I got this exact question at CDC, at the HASPA board twice of what's the magic number? How do we know what's sufficient? And at the end of the day, right now, that decision is with this group to say, based on our knowledge of this project, based on our knowledge of the community, this seems like it's a fair trade-off or not. We think that there should be adjustments to it.
Thank you so much for that. So first off, I'd say thank you for being here tonight. I mean, we should have rolled the red carpet out. I mean, this is one of the greatest projects I think I've seen here in the 6 years I've been here. I mean, a giant building that's going to produce a ton of tax revenue, doesn't generate any traffic, is a great partner, cleans up the block, keeps things clean, improves AI efficiency, reduces latency in our local area, and probably will generate additional data center interest in the area. I think this is absolutely a wonderful, wonderful project for here. So I'm totally supportive of it. And then per your 3 questions that you asked, the first one being the public benefits proposal. I guess I don't understand this because this is going to generate a ton of tax revenue. I mean, every study I've ever read about data centers, they're net positive, incredibly net positive. An additional 25 feet, that's going to generate an additional floor, additional server space, additional rack space that generates additional revenue. I don't even understand why there's any money spent for public benefits. It makes no sense to me. But if you want to pay for it, I mean, I think it's ridiculous. I think it's a roadblock to future developers that want to build things here. And for those that haven't had the opportunity to visit Santa Clara, there are sections of Santa Clara that are all data centers. If you've been to Ashburn, Virginia, a data center is built in 3 months. Visit Atlanta, Georgia, massive data center development. Mississippi, 13-acre data center. So California is losing out, and it's because I think of power issues and other issues that are creating issues. So I think we should embrace this, and I think this whole area should be filled with data centers. And then in terms of the design or the parking reduction, yeah, I think data center metrics have been studied for 20 years. There's no reason to put parking there. I mean, I think this is perfectly fine. This should not even be an issue to discuss moving further. And then finally, the design. In my opinion, I think trying to screen the substation is missing the entire point. I mean, we have the center of AI, the center of innovation, the center of everything we have right here is happening in that building. And to screen that substation is just missing the point. So if I was the designer of this, I would embrace that and I would build it so that everybody that's traveling along 92 knows that this is a data center, knows that this is a center of AI compute, and hopefully other people will come and build here. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate your presentation. I'm very, very, very excited about what you have moving forward. Oh, and the other thing is, I would be very reluctant to agreeing to any 100% renewable power, because I think we all know that that is silly given the state of our energy system. I think we've seen nationally what data centers are doing and the importance of them. So I think creating that encumbers the future of Hayward and the community to participate in the new economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Stevens. Commissioner Hardy.
Thank you, Chair Lowe. So while I am also excited about this project, I do respectfully disagree with Commissioner Stevens. I think the public benefit is very important. I feel like there's potential, although slight. I didn't get an answer necessarily to the question I posed prior to the meeting about how many jobs have been lost potentially. Very few people will actually be employed at this facility, even though those jobs sound like they'll be great. So I feel like there are some things that Hayward benefits from, but then also some things that maybe we could use some other benefit to the community to replace what we may be losing. So That being said, I do have just some ongoing concerns that I'm willing to let go of around the proximity to the airport. I feel like the answer I received from staff, totally, it sounds like if there are any issues, that is going to be addressed. Same with the fire department, with the alternative, I think, means and methods requests. Like, I feel very confident that if there is an issue, they're going to handle it. I also do have a concern around the food trucks as well, and just I'm not entirely sure what the purpose would be if there are still the tenants across the street that are also serving food, and they're the ones who we saw some comments from, some emails, who are already concerned about their businesses. So I wouldn't want to do anything else to harm them, even though food trucks in general are nice. I also worry if we're thinking about security and how we don't necessarily want a bunch of other people around the data center. Food trucks attract other people. Like, people post it, people show up, so I don't know if that's a good idea either. So when it comes to the actual, my suggestions around the public benefit package, I really did try to do my own methodology and calculation. I just looked at what's been proposed. And so if you all bear with me with my math I was doing. So the original proposal of $1.1 million was an additional, it was $44,000 per square foot that we would have been receiving. And then the developer has offered now $1.3 million, which is $52,000 per additional square foot. The city, if we added on the $250,000 additional dollars, that's $62,000. And then looking at what, and I think I said the name wrong earlier, is it HASPA? And not HAPSA, it's HASPA. Yes, so what they are proposing is actually $120,000 per square foot. I mean, sorry, not square foot, additional foot over the 75 feet. So my proposal was going to be $100,000. Seeing now their proposal, I'd be willing to want to know like what they were actually thinking that additional money. Like, they didn't necessarily lay out what they would want it to go to. So I am putting out that I think $100,000 per additional foot would be fair. I do think that the Shoreline Interpretive Center should be added to it, not replacing other things that are already there, but just its own pot of money for that. And then I also think that the amount allocated to Hayward Unified School District should be increased. In our STAC newsletter, also STAC name for Hayward, just yesterday, they put out their, Hayward Unified is going through budget reductions. They're going to be having town hall meetings about that. I think there is opportunity. If there is something that can be done for the public benefit to help the school district, that would be great. I also think that the Russell City Art Project Committee, there's different Russell City committees, but specifically the Art Project, I would like to advocate for them. They have actually been looking at doing some kind of an archway in Russell City and need funding for that. And so I don't know where the city is with that. So those are just some of my suggestions. And then also I did wonder if maybe allocating part of that to the Hayward Fire Department might actually be useful as well, if there would be any extra like oversight or anything that they would have to do as a result of the project, that it might be nice to offset that with something for them. And just in general, so for the parking reduction, I am in support of that. Again, I agree, if there aren't going to be people there. I did wonder some when the talking about how many employees will be there during the construction, like I know there won't be buildings yet for part of that, but then some curiosity and maybe for a future discussion about like how they will all manage to be there. And then as far as the design, I didn't have any strong opinions about that. I appreciated the effort that the developer clearly put into just thinking about it and looking at the actual environment and the community of Hayward and trying to plan something for that. But I don't have any strong opinion one way or the other. I think any of the options that you've presented would be fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hardy. Any other comments by commissioners? All right, Commissioner Hammond?
So to just kind of go through from the questions here about the height increase, I have no objections to the height increase. From seeing some of your other projects, you have more room, land area to build. I can see that you have some constraints here, and more than likely you're making that up by going higher. I think that the proposed mass of the building is pretty large, and from the conceptual drawings that I've seen, everything is kind of like it's close up. No one will really ever see this building close up.
Excuse me, Commissioner, could you turn on your microphone?
I think
We're not getting.
maybe
thank
I'm
you.
just not talking
There
into
we
it.
go. That would be great. Thank you.
Better? Okay. So the conceptual drawings are nice. I appreciate the time you put into it, but they're all seen from like a close-up perspective. But this building will really never be seen from such a close-up. Mostly, it's going to be seen as you're coming into the city from the bridge. And so my concern is that as you're coming in and stuck in traffic, and you're looking at which is going to be the tallest building here in that area, that it's impressive, that it's unique, that people are looking at that as an example of perhaps future investment designs to follow. So anyway, the drawings look nice, but it would be nice to see how it might look from a distance. Let me see. I'm always concerned that it is the height of the building going to block out the sun to, let's say, like the businesses that might rely on sunlight for their customers to enjoy a nice sunny lunch, and just experienced seeing other tall buildings. Will it be creating a wind tunnel or a funnel? Some of these questions I suppose I could have asked earlier, but just for your consideration. I'm in agreement that about the public benefits package. I think it is necessary. The site that you're displacing potentially might have employed a few hundred people, and now it's down to a few. So I think the public's benefit package is important to help offset that. I generally agree with the staff's recommendations regarding the Eden Landing Ecological Reserve and the contributions to the public infrastructure, including, if I'm reading this right, maybe perhaps increased contributions. Some other things that may possibly you might consider. I think you mentioned a gateway monument, if I'm not mistaken. I think you were talking about the sign that's up there for the businesses. In addition to that, I'm not sure if you were talking about a gateway monument. I think there was one proposed for a monument for Jackson Street, somewhere near Soto. But it might be a possibility for a nice gateway monument as you're coming into the city. To also maybe consider for your EV chargers, charging station destinations for commuters that perhaps you could, obviously you would charge them for the electricity, but or for the charging, but perhaps you could offer charging stations for commuters, which would bring people to, hopefully, to the local businesses. Let me see. I guess this kind of goes to the screening and the design, but we'd like to see perhaps some investments in public art. I think that the screening, perhaps instead of the proposed steel or blind, perhaps could be a nice canvas for our local muralists to probably more represent the hills and the shoreline in their murals. They could also incorporate, like they were talking about earlier, putting "Welcome to Hayward" or something like that on there. I'd like to perhaps see more investments in planting more trees. I did have some questions about that may be a little bit, some of my comments. But perhaps also some ongoing community involvement besides the public benefits package is to perhaps join in on Hayward's Adopt-A-Block program or attending city cleanups to involve your employees in community events. I think you mentioned a park in one of the, in some of the things I was reading. I don't know if that was an on-site park for the employees or if this was just a park in the local area, but I think certainly investing in a park would be nice. Again, the schools, to invest in the schools, I think would be good. Like was mentioned, we are showing a deficit in the schools, and an investment in that would be, I think, very appreciated. And then maybe perhaps for as far as like the food trucks, I know those businesses are hurting for business because there are vacancy rates are pretty high around that area, and the places that do serve lunch and breakfast probably might not appreciate you know, extra food trucks, and then you know, perhaps you know, offer vouchers to your employees maybe to you know, visit some of these establishments. For parking, I'm in favor of reducing the amount of parking. I can see that you don't need as many parking spaces. It is a large reduction in the square footage, but I appreciate with so few employees that space would probably be better used in on-site in your infrastructure than in the parking. And I also appreciate the alternative parking plan. If this building is not going to be used as a data center any longer, that you do have an option of adding more parking later on. And then I already brought up the perhaps using EV chargers for the general public. As far as the design, again, it's not unlike any other industrial buildings that you might see in the city. I would again like to see it. You know, if this is if there's maybe room for improvement in the design, so that from a distance it will be, you know, stand out, and you know, it'll be unique and something that people will, you know, not mind seeing as they come into the city at all. So again, for the screen, perhaps public art might be a good use for that, for the screening. I think you already talked about the noise that it'll be looked at, and there are no dangers to the community. There was, I did read that you're going to be removing quite a few trees from the property, and that you do plan on planting trees elsewhere. Maybe I was just a little bit confused on how you value a tree. It seemed like the 50 trees that were being removed were valued at $168,000, but to plant 55 new trees was only $17,000. So I'm not sure how those costs are generated. But I'm sort of a tree advocate, and I would like to see if it's possible for you to keep as many trees on the property as possible or relocate them. And even as far as the design, I've seen some of your other structures where you've incorporated like balconies for plants and other greenery, and perhaps maybe you can incorporate some of that maybe in the design too. In general, I'm excited about the project. I think it would. I think this would be good for the community. It looks like it'd be generating money for the city, and I'm looking forward to seeing the reports from the environmental, and and I hope that this project will be a benefit for the city of Hayward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Meyer.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. Thank you, Chair. Thank you to you guys for coming tonight, but also for reaching out to us to do some early Zoom informative calls. It's very good. And thank you to staff. So far, it's looking wonderful. I am very much in favor of having data centers such as this in Hayward. I am also very much in favor of the public benefits proposal need. I think that a data center such as this can benefit Hayward a lot. I also believe that Hayward has a lot to offer. I think Hayward, comparatively to Silicon Valley, has a really competitive price per square foot. This location in particular is right next to a switching station, switching yard. It's also right next to a shoreline, which could have some benefits. It's also, if you're even looking at Fremont, potentially 10 degrees cooler, which will cut down on the cooling and the energy and the water usage. I think that there's a lot of benefits that Hayward has to offer. Plus, you got a great commissioner, staff, and a council and mayor. So there you go. You can't beat that. So the public benefit proposal, I like the idea of funding the interpreter center. I don't know if it's in the potential, but it would be nice to not take from another group and maybe create a segment for the interpreter center. I think that I'm hoping that that's something that's feasible and potentially possible. The business grant program, what Lamnin mentioned was having it as an ongoing option. I kind of like that idea. I think that's pretty neat idea. If it's a potential, if it works out, I'm for that. So besides those two comments, the public benefits, I'm okay with the way it's laid out. The parking reduction, my comment was just on creating EV chargers everywhere. I do believe in solar and renewable, and I do believe that every watt that we add may not benefit completely today, but if we keep building and building, eventually it's going to overtake the option. So every watt that we generate, I think, is an advantage to society, my view. So besides that, I'm okay with the parking reduction. And then with design, I don't know if this is design or not, but we're talking about the food trucks. That might be the other segment. But if we could possibly make it a malleable experiment where we're not saying trucks are going to be there forever, but let's see how it affects our current businesses. And let's say, hey, for 6 months we're going to run some data and we're going to see what happens, or maybe a year, and then maybe we can make some alterations on that. I think that would be preferable, because the last thing I'd like to do is hurt our current businesses there. Although I love the truck idea, I just don't want to affect negatively our current restaurants and businesses. And then I guess the last thing would be the design. Again, every watt is beneficial in my opinion. So if we were to, on this multi-million-dollar scale, and I know money is still valuable, I'm not trying to make you think I don't think it is valuable, but if we were to add the solar as not solar ready, but solar like working, I don't see that as a large percentage of the overall financial footprint. So I'm hoping that that could be something that we could seriously consider. So with that, that's all.
Thank you very much. From my perspective, I also am I'm very happy with the Mr. Kirsten and your company's commitment to clean energy, and I was very happy about your commitment to 100% carbon-free electricity. I do think that I would encourage staff to make that a condition of approval. And I would encourage staff to make it a condition of approval that is continuous. Yeah. And the reason being that this will be one of Hayward's biggest power consumers in the city, so I think that it would be an appropriate thing to consider for staff. Also, as far as the parking is concerned, I understand that it's unlikely that you'll even need 68 spots, is what it sounds like. I wish we could move some of those spots to other parts in Hayward. That'd be awesome. But since we can't do that, I'm fine with the 68 spots, and I agree that it would be great if the EV chargers is not just EV ready, but it's the actual EV chargers are installed. As far as the design, well, before we talk about the design, I did want to say, as far as the food trucks are concerned, I do think it's a good idea. I think if you have 300 to 400 construction workers or people as the buildings are being built, probably having some food trucks won't be detrimental to surrounding restaurants, is my guess. It's a lot of workers. It'll just add variety and more choices for the people who are working there at that time. As far as the design is concerned, I really like the idea of that Ms. Lambden said, making sure that there are solar panels, not just that it's solar ready. I also like the idea of if you're going to have the screening, then going back to what Commissioner Stevens said, if we want to advertise, we decide that as a city we want to advertise that, hey, we have these data centers here, just put AI on the side, Hayward equals AI or something to draw attention. But no, seriously, I really like the design. I really think the design is much more aesthetically pleasing than I thought it was going to be when I started reading the materials. I was impressed, and I really also appreciate your commitment to elevating the design. That was really, really impressive. So from my standpoint, I think it does seem like data processing center, and this one particular, with your presentation, I am for it. And does any other commissioner have any other comments? Then I'm going to close commissioner comments, and my understanding is we do not need to act. This is a work session, so I'm going to move on to item number 2, which is approval of the minutes of the Planning Commission meeting on October 10th, 2024. Do I have
I'll make a motion to move those minutes.
Okay. Motion moved by Commissioner Stevens, and second? Anyone? Go ahead.
I second.
Commissioner Hammond, seconds. And
Before we vote, can I just, you have a comment as well? I had submitted to the city just some corrections to the minutes, and I didn't know how I should handle that now. I could name them now, or I don't know if that's going to be already a part of the record.
I think the clerk's office received some of the comments on the minutes. You didn't, some minor edits? Okay. I thought we forwarded them. You can, we can add them for clarification. We can either continue the item or we can approve it as amended if you want to read those into the record this evening.
Okay, they were very minor, so I think reading them in is fine. So on page 8, Ro Aguilar's name was misspelled. And then under commission reports, it listed that planning manager, the planning manager's report said that there were 5 announced. It said that there were 6, but there were only 5. And then Commissioner Meyer's comments were referencing the trunk or treat event, which wasn't named. And then Commissioner Hammond's report, there was also another misspelling of Palmacia Park.
Commissioner Meyer.
I haven't read a million minutes, but I wanted to comment on the creation of these minutes compared to the other ones I've read. They seemed remarkably better than past ones. Everyone is going to have errors, I believe, or potentially have errors, and maybe not exactly the ideas that we had might not be put on paper exactly the same. But I just wanted to commend you guys, or whoever writes them, on this week's, or that day's minutes. I thought it was wonderful. Thank you.
All right, may we have a roll call vote from Ms. Allen? Would you take the vote?
Commissioner Franco Clausen, absent. Commissioner Goodbody,
Abstain.
Commissioner Hammond,
Yes.
Commissioner Hardy,
Yes.
Commissioner Myers,
Yes.
Commissioner Stephen,
Yes.
Chair Lowe.
Abstain. So it passes with 4 votes of yes. And at this time, now is the time for, do we have any comments by commissioners? No? Do we, Mr. LaCherco, do you have anything you want to tell us?
Yeah.
Any
okay,
announcements?
A couple of, a few oral report items. So the next Planning Commission meeting is normally the 2nd and the 4th, but obviously it's Thanksgiving. So we will be canceling that meeting unless somebody wants to bring me some turkey, but I'm assuming that you're all going to be eating that or whatever, a meatless turkey or whatever on your own. That's totally fine. Want to wish everyone a happy and safe Thanksgiving with family or friends. The next meeting that we will be having scheduled is the meeting on December 12th, where we will be bringing back some of those zoning text amendments that support the housing element. That's going to be coming back on December 12th. I also wanted to note, too, just for the record, that City Hall is going to be going through a business closure the week of Thanksgiving. So if anyone is coming down to City Hall for permits or inquiries, please don't. You're going to waste some gas. We will be, and so we have noticed that online when we are letting the public know if people do have permits that they want to submit for during the closure, there is the option to continue to do that. We just won't be processing them until after we return. Wanted to also let everyone know that following the December 12th meeting, the meeting after that would fall on the week of Christmas, and we're going to be canceling that one as well, for obvious reasons. And then the next regularly scheduled meeting that we will be bringing forward, aside from that December 12th meeting on the text amendments, we're also going to be bringing the 2025 meeting calendar so the planning commissioners can plan accordingly. And then the second meeting in January, which we likely will have something scheduled for, we will also be bringing forward the election of officers, which happens every year. So just a verbal update that that's coming down the pike as well. And that concludes my comments for this week. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have anything they want to add for the good of the order? All right, so the meeting is now adjourned at 9:07.
Recording stopped.